Okay. Yeah, my picture's not in the pamphlet. I've complained about that. I'm being shortchanged here. I'm doing 2 presentations. I should have 2 pictures, but never mind. Okay. I'm not sure some of you were at this event last year when I did a presentation, which largely centered on marine disasters and the legal aspects and ISM. Excuse me. There's a little bit of that this year, but it takes us to the next stage or next step forward, where we don't look at so much at why certain pieces of legislation were produced over the years, but a little bit more of what actually not happened, but the risks and hazards that caused it to happen. So, I'd say the history over the centuries has shown us that the maritime environment is a pretty dangerous place, an abundance of hazards. But men and women are still prepared to go down there of necessity, not for profit, sometimes for pleasure, but the hazards and risks remain there for sure. And there's a saying, they that go down to the sea in ships that do business in great waters, which is biblical. So definitions, we all know our definitions, so just do them. So we have a hazard is something that can cause harm. The risk is a chance, high or low, that any hazard can cause harm. Everybody okay with that, I take it? So we get to this stage, this is I put in as a little illustration of what I'm talking about. So there we have the hazard, the risk, and there's lunch, harm. Okay, this guy, that's a real hazard. The first time I produced this, I had to take it down. I showed it to our company in Aberdeen. I was forced to take off. There is another picture there of lunch. But it was considered to be too brutal. This is from last year. Okay, so in this one here, ships were getting overloaded. Many ships. In earlier times, it's not uncommon that owners allowed their ships to go to sea overloaded, and that was a hazard, of course, which increased the risk of sinking. Pretty obvious. Okay, so the risks and the hazards are there. Very often these hazards they like to think of them as being natural hazards, but usually, or very often, it's the human factor that takes you there. And in this case, of course, Captain Smith, there were ice warnings out. Those were the early days of radios on ships, radio operators. He knew there was ice there, and he continued to go at full speed, knowing there was ice there. So he created his own hazard. He knew the risk, but he created the hazard. He should have slowed down, and probably wouldn't have, I'd say wouldn't have happened, but certainly the risk would have been reduced. There was a few folks killed on that one. I don't remember those two, by the way. Okay.
Really, Joe?
No, I don't remember those two. These two I do remember. I don't suppose many of you guys would. The Torrey Canyon. Sorry. Torrey Canyon was a tanker, which anybody know about the Torrey Canyon? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. This tanker, the master decided he made a poor decision, so he created his own risk. He sailed between the Scilly Isles, the Isles of Scilly, nothing to do with being silly, and the Seven Stars Reef, and he hit the rocks. It turns out actually he didn't have a proper complement of charts, for one thing, to do that kind of stuff. There were sayings that he was trying to catch the tide at Milford Haven. Anyway, he needn't have done that. So, human error again, he created his own hazard. Right? Big pollution incident, only one loss of life, and that was in the salvage phase, where a guy, one of the salvage masters, got killed. This one here brings us closer to home. Anybody remember the Herald of Free Enterprise?
Yeah.
Okay, now we're getting closer. So the Herald of Free Enterprise sailed at full speed at 18 knots out of Zeebrugge. The bow doors opened. Not a good idea on a ship doing 18 knots. Anyway, the water came in. She sank in very, very short time, just outside Zeebrugge, with a loss of 193 lives. So if we go back a bit, sorry, just to refresh your memories. This one here brought in the load line regulations. Okay, Mr. Plimsoll. This one brought in SOLAS. Okay. This one brought in MARPOL. And the other one brought in ISM. Okay, so those, as I said this morning, do we have to have disasters all the time to make things good? Maybe. Sad but true. Hyperalga, etc., etc. So what has all this got to do with eCMID? Well, all these questions in the 17 sections and 23 sections of MISW, they're asking the inspector to check something. All right. As I said yesterday, he's not doing an audit. eCMID is not an audit; it's an inspection. And he's checking some equipment, systems and processes. That's ISM, people, certificates and documents. That's what he's doing. And the questions are really an overview of how compliant the vessel is with several, but not all, of the codes which apply to the industry. ISM being the principal one, maybe, SOLAS, MARPOL, STCW, MLC, that's a bundle of other ones. So all he's doing is giving a snapshot of these things. But it's not an audit and it's not a compliance check. A compliance, so it could be described as risk assessment tool, although the inspector is not doing the risk assessment. All right? Properly executed and with adequate opportunity for input from those working on the vessel, which is important, is a valuable tool for the safety of the vessel and crew. Poorly executed, which is why we have the eCMID today, or trying to have it, with a low level of participation and input by the crew, then the opposite might be true. This then leads the operator, or who is receiving the eCMID, making a bad judgment because he's taking this report as a valuable, accurate document, and he's basing his judgment on that, whether to take the ship on or whatever to do. So that could be over reliance on a poor quality eCMID is creating a risk as well. So it's important that ABIs do their job properly, which is what we've been hammering home yesterday and this morning all the time. Reducing the risk of poor quality vessel inspections, hazards. A poor quality vessel inspection is a hazard. With the attendant risk factor is one of the fundamental reasons for the introduction of the ABI scheme, managed by the Institute of Marine Surveying on behalf of INCA. A couple of cases to look at. Again, it's more disasters. This particular vessel, nothing to do with our particular industry. Anybody know, do you rate this one? Anybody familiar with this one? This was a car carrier, 1998, which is, she was not, for this class of vessel, ISM was not in force, okay, at the time of this incident. However, the fleet that it was a part of did have vessels that qualified for ISM. So they actually put the ISM through the whole fleet. And it turns out that the safety management system. So it turns out that this safety management system had a load of stuff that had absolutely nothing to do with car carrier. Okay? And it wasn't mandatory, so it was extended to the Eurasian Union. What happened, in fact, was she was a car carrier, and I'm not familiar with car carriers myself, but it turns out that they had a truck on the car deck, on car deck number 4, I think it was. They had a truck with batteries on it, all right? And at the same time, they were refueling the cars, and it wasn't a good idea. So they were jump-starting the engines while they were refueling cars with gasoline. And it went wrong. Nobody knows specifically what happened, but that's where it happened. And that was the cause of it, and it wiped out the ship. But it turns out the master and crew was completely ignorant of the hazards of car carriers. They didn't know. The ship manager's manuals failed to give guidance for loading vehicles that should have included prohibition of hazardous activities. All right, they shouldn't have been doing this. And this is the key here. If the crew have been properly instructed, trained and drilled, how many times have we seen that? Everywhere, through eCMID, we're asked these questions. Again, it comes on our own ships, about training, about drills, about instructions, and serviceable fire extinguishers. The fire would have been contained, it wouldn't have spread. For these checks are all, I know it's a car carrier, but these are all things that we're asked in eCMID to report on. The crew weren't even familiar with the operation of the CO2 system. I actually find that to be a fairly, not regular, but not an uncommon thing that the crew or the people who should know the CO2 system are not 100% familiar with it, that they could go and operate it without delays. Now coming to our own industry. So people will remember the sad event of the Bourbon Dolphin, I'm sure. And again, the ship need not have been lost with those lives. The hazard was human-made, always is. It's not an act of God. This particular one, the vessel was known to have stability issues. The yard knew she had stability issues. And in the report I read, it uses this, these issues were not clearly communicated by the shipyard to the owners. I don't know what that means. Somebody, you know, it's a strange choice of word, not clearly communicated. But anyway, they didn't seem to know what was going on. The company did not follow the ISM code for all risks be identified, which we discussed in the training. So again, the risk, they didn't identify the risk that this vessel wasn't stable in certain conditions of towing. She was actually handling chain. And also the ISM code demands procedures for key operations that the vessel is to perform. It didn't happen. And this must be familiar to a lot of people. The master was given 1.5 hours to familiarize himself with the crew, the vessel, and the ongoing operation. But yet, in the safety management system, the company has the requirement that new crews shall be familiarized with and inducted into the vessel before they take up their duties on board. So, I think this handover period, or lack of handover period, is a fairly common event. But the ISM code says, on the matter of risk, the company should assess all identified risks to its ships, personnel, and the environment, and establish appropriate safeguards. and compliance with mandatory rules, which we talked about yesterday, applicable codes, guidelines, standards, etc., and maritime industry organizations, which is basically IMCA. All right, guidelines, IMCA.
Is that the mimosa?
No, not the mimosa, but I don't know whether to show this actually.
Well, don't then. Don't if you're unsure.
I don't know. I don't know.
Okay, that's fine.
If you can cut it off in time, I'll show it.
No, I can't. I can't guarantee to do that.
All right, there's a video clip I'm not going to show you because I need to cut it off at a certain point and we're not sure we can cut it off, but it ends badly. The video of a guy on deck who gets smacked by a chain. But we showed it yesterday, but I had the guy from the outside to cut it off for me. So I was sure. So I won't show that one. This
What was
one,
the gist of it, though, Joe? It's worth just talking about.
All right, the gist of it is there's a guy on deck, and there's something on the end of a rope over the stern, big rope, towing rope, and there's a chain and a shackle, the usual jewelry assemblies, and a tug of wire. And he's trying to undo it. And he can't. Surprise, surprise, he can't undo the shackle because there's weight on it. But it doesn't occur to him that this isn't going to work. But he keeps doing it. He gets another tool from his mate. He's doing the split pin, I suppose, or whatever. And he's undoing it. And standing tug of wire is there, I think, and his ship's towing wire or driver is here, and the other bit going over the stern. Anyway, he eventually succeeds in undoing it, and he gets smacked rather badly. The thing about that is, who planned this? Who did the risk assessment? It's always a tricky thing undoing these things anyway, which means doubly sure there should have been risk assessment. There should have been a plan how to take the weight off this and undo it safely. And that wasn't, if it was done, he wasn't a part of it. Okay, and he gets smacked. So I'm not going to show that one again. Anybody remember this one? Viking in there? I think it's pronounced Isla, actually.
Isla.
In the Scottish. Pronounced Isla.
Very fine whiskey, Joe.
Yeah. In this one, again, training, risk awareness, silly incident, but it cost 3 guys their lives. And again, it's risk, hazard. There was nothing wrong with the chain locker. It didn't do anything other than corrode. But the hazard was there, the risk was there, and there were human beings, mariners, that went into it. I'm not saying these 3 guys made a mistake, it cost them their lives, but somewhere around this, some human made a mistake. The hazard generally passive. They sit there, they just wait. They don't do anything. They wait for someone to misjudge the risk. That's why we do risk assessments. Unfortunately, the general way people do it now, generic risk assessments, don't mention it. Not to me. There should be no such thing as a generic risk assessment. Crazy word. Anyway, what happened in this case? The 3 guys, apparently the chain was making a noise or something. It was disturbing people. So 3 guys went into the chain locker. 1 went in, I think, initially. 1 went into the chain locker to whatever, try and stop the noise or tie the chain back to whatever, and he collapsed. And then his mates went in to try and get him out, which is very often what happens in confined space incidents. They think that he's collapsed, I won't collapse, but they always do. You know why, of course. You know why? What was wrong? Rust is iron oxide. Oxide uses oxygen. If these guys had been tanker guys, they probably would have known that. They would have known the risk of rust in tanks. I don't know if they were or not, but anyway, they used up the oxygen. They went in. It's oxygen efficient, and they got killed. But the report says inadequacy in training and risk awareness. Lack of appropriate equipment, impractical safety rules, developed by shore-based personnel. So we go back to what we're here for, which is the eCMID. All these things appear one way or another in eCMID. In one form, maybe one time removed. But eCMID is to stop our crews killing themselves or injuring themselves. So the message is risk assessments should be taken very, very seriously. And I don't believe, generally speaking, that we do take them seriously enough in many cases. We're still having accidents. We're still killing people. And one that's coming up, which we sort of talked about, the vessels in layup. This is Batam. Okay. I don't know when. Not quite fairly recently. You know, no. I'm going to say this year. I think we might have this done. M3 produced the images for me. So these ships are laid up now. What risks are going to emerge when and if they are recommissioned? Risks that we probably haven't experienced in the volume and size before that we're going to experience as time goes on with these laid up ships. And the one, competency of crews. For sure, there's going to be a risk there, because a lot of the experienced and competent seafarers that were there at the beginning of the Depression have gone. They won't be coming back. So there's no progression. The younger people will be coming in. They won't have the experience. They won't have the role models to look at, to teach them, to keep them right. There's going to be a gap, a competency gap there. It happens every time. We've been through so many of these. This is probably the worst, but it happens every time. Happened in tankers when the tanker crisis was a few years ago. We had the same thing. Junior officers were coming in, the ink not even dried on the certificate. They hadn't a clue what they were doing. Not their fault. It's just a fact. The validity of the safety management system. Well, many of these ships, I guess, are out of certification. I don't know that for a fact, but I would guess many of them are. So there's going to maybe transfer owners. So there's going to be new management systems, or old management systems that haven't been updated, or new crews that don't know the system due to that company. There's a whole catalogue of holes there, many like Swiss cheese. They can all line up. Reliability of equipment and machinery. Ships that have been stacked like this, with the best will in the world and the best engineers going out and commissioning them again, we can expect there to be faults and defects that don't get caught. Maybe small ones, maybe big ones, but they'll be there. Ships like human beings. They like to operate. If you're not keeping your body in good shape, ongoing systems to look after it, you deteriorate. The ships are the same. Thank you. That's it.
Joe, thank you very much. Any questions for Joe?
Any questions? So everybody's happy with risk and hazards?
Joe. I was wondering, you talk about the increase of recommissioned vessels over the next wee while as the industry recovers, and verifying crew competency. In my experience, say auditing or inspecting vessels that are being recommissioned, that the availability of crew on board for those inspections are unavailable, especially when companies are trying to reduce costs by not having the crew available until mobilisation. So do you see that as a increased risk, I guess, to when doing the inspection? And how can we as inspectors manage that?
I don't know. I don't think you've got any influence over it. To be honest, I mean, you inspect the vessel, and when you're dealing with the way in East, you're only doing eCMID, right? You can only answer the questions that's in eCMID. Now, you've got the qualifications one, which doesn't actually it tells you a guy is qualified to STCW or whatever, DP, all right? Doesn't tell you that competency word again keeps lurking around there, and it never just gets you there. You know? Yeah. So, and the other thing is, of course, in most cases, your ship's crews are changing on a cycle. They know the ship. They're not all changing at once. Here we've got a dead ship. Throw the crew on, as you say, sail in 3 days or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And if you take go back to this. So if you take this, have we got time to do this? It could be new owners, a new management system. Reliability. There's a whole pot of issues there, and I agree with you that they won't put on. Good quality owners and operators will.
Yeah.
They will realise there is. Others who are short of cash strapped will not.
Because in previous inspections I've done, I've maybe had a master or a deck officer and an engineer, and that's pretty much it. So when I go through my certificates, to do a snapshot of the crew, you're pretty much unable to do that.
Yeah, it's going to be an issue.
You just have to write it down. That's all.
You know, but you can't actually depart from what's an eCMID. That's the trouble. You can't complete an eCMID and then right at the end, your reservation. You've got to be careful what you say. You could put in your comments, or you could certainly say, make a comment. You can't pass judgment. You could say in the additional comments, only 3 crew not mobilised yet. You know, it's quite valid to say that. It's not actually valid to draw a conclusion and suggest that the crew's not going to be competent when the ship sails. You can't do that. You can say the fact there's only the chief, the master, and the chief mate on board, or the second, whatever. You can say that, and you could also say the ship is sailing believed to be sailing in 3 days. I guess that's about all you can say. But it is going to be an issue with these ships, for sure. And even before the slump, there were at IMCA meetings, there was rumbles, that's the word, about crew competency, especially amongst DP people. You know, there was always mentioned, go back, there's always this, people would saying that competency generally was slightly on the decline, you know, it was being said.
Do you have a definition of competency?
That's a good one. Next question. I think it's competency is something people have been trying to define. It's a mixture or a coming together of training, knowledge, experience, that you can effectively discharge safely a job. But there's many definitions. We get certificates of competency in the service. You get a certificate of competency, but I know when I got my first ticket, I wouldn't say I was competent, not by a long way, not till I'd done a couple of months actually doing the job. So it is an issue. Okay.
Any further questions? Joe, thank you very much.